Please, forgive this roundabout way of giving our plight context. I've a flair for the dramatic. This internet thing is marvelous. I can't describe the advancements we've made in the mere months we've had access to it. The only thing missing in these vast archives is, well, us. It seems all records concerning the barony of Enverness have been lost to time. I intended to describe our situation and request the insight of this uncanny viewership, but I've come into possession of an interesting perspective that handily sets the stage. I've done you the favor of transcribing the tastiest bits, but unfortunately you'll still have to sift through plenty of peasant nonsense.
My name is Elspeth Lennox, and I have never partaken of the flesh. If you read no further, know this at least. My family and I staked out a new home amid the mountains northwest of town. Atop the sheer cliffs overlooking the perpetual storming seas, we've built our huts on this plateau. The soil here is poor, but we scrape out a crop of bear and hemp, sunlight being so scarce that we can only harvest once before winter. I remember how we took the light for granted. When I would fret as a child, my mother would sometimes sigh and say, "The sun will rise tomorrow." I've read that many parents use similar expressions to express on their children that troubles are fleeting. Perhaps it also means the world continues on, indifferent to one's problems. Either way, whatever fate befell us, that cursed day defies common wisdom and even the laws of nature. The last sundown, dusk fall. It hovers still, just below the horizon, behind an unyielding veil of storm clouds. At best, the sky is lit up in a brilliant orange. The vast majority of the time, however, the world is awash of the gray-blue din of dusk. The sun is trapped, just like us. For those of us who need to eat, we get most of our food through trade. The pikemen in the north and the farmers of the south will discreetly trade with us if the price is right. With the island's already limited renewable resources under strict control, we deal in more unconventional wares. The most reliable resource there is, the boat. A rotten, moss-encrusted boat washes up at the Foxton docks every 24 hours. It's more accurate to say Foxton dock. Only one pier defies the grasping sea after all these years. If we're unlucky, the sea may toss the boat onto the jagged rocks. Rolling water makes short work of any passengers aboard, and no one stands to collect. At substantial risk, we reap quite the bounty, enough to start our plans in motion. We set up our ambush further along the road than usual. So far down we could hear the Baron's lackeys dismantling the boat. The way to the docks is the only gradual slope to the shoreline. Millions of footfalls have smothered the path to a slippery sheen. A score of passengers block the only route to the Baron's people. Movement on the road stirred us into readiness. The first sign of our prey would be along shortly. A procession of silent wretches shambling by, Matilda McGale bringing up the rear. The bare bodies of this forlorn parade glistened with seawater, their eyes locked on the ground in front of them, holding the earnest resignation of the broken. They diverge off the road to the right, bare feet tearing up a less trodden trail. Tilly's drop is just a stone's throw away from where we set up shop, and from my vantage point at the apex of the bend, I could see the edge of the cliff. Crouching in my hiding spot, I watched as each silhouette ascended to the top. Without hesitation, they marched single file off the edge and gave themselves to the rocks below. Yet another group made their way towards us, but these too were not our quarry. These people conversed and leisurely picked up their way up the path. Like us, they wore rough hempen clothes, but unlike us, they did not brandish clubs and knives fashioned of bone. As always, we let them carry on their way, the unspoken agreement being none may turn back, lest they ruin our trap. With inferior numbers, we need every advantage we can get. Our barricade does not enjoy the element of surprise. Every other boat, the Baron's troop knows they must go through us on their way to the keep. The rock face in the bend concealed our waiting fighters. Once the Baron's scavengers rounded the bend, we'd be upon them. Sure enough, a force of about 50 strong lumbered up the hill. They've learned to station watchers along the road that converged with primary group as they passed. It gives them the general idea of our position each time. We deemed moving up the blockade as limiting their strength was worth the heightened alarm. Showing extra caution, they stopped in front of my hidden team and appointed a few of their ranks to scout out the bend. It was nerve-wracking, having so many of them between us and the rest of our family. We have never put ourselves in such a risky position. Their scouts let out warning cries before our people could silence them, leaving the Baron's scavengers with a choice. They did what we had hoped they'd do and bunched up. Most of them moved as one into the ambush, and the melee began. Like a practiced dance, partners squared off and locked arms. Knives flashed into flesh and worsened the slippery footing. Clubs whipped through the air until they connected with sickening smacks. Those without weapons clawed, gouged eyes, bit out throats, anything they could manage before being brought down. Several members of our family were brutally killed, just as they had been thousands of times before. There was no permanence to that battle. Everyone involved was a passenger. We think passengers are the reason there's a boat at all. Since duskfall, everyone in Enverness stopped aging. Most bodily functions still occur, but I look exactly the same as I did 400 years ago. It seemed a miracle at first. Apart from the initial trauma with the crew of the Falcon, the first strange occurrence was when old Thomas Gillies died. He'd been ill for weeks, and at his age there was nothing for it. Not long after he passed, word spread through town that Tom was back from the dead. He washed up at the docks, rolling with glee in a rickety boat, naked as the day he was born. Suffice it to say, the elders didn't take kindly to Tom's wonderful fortune. They thought it profane for a man to stand in the same room as his own corpse. But then Tom returned on the boat the next day, and the day after that. It became clear that no manner execution would take. Old Tom was the first to die after duskfall, and became the first passenger. He was far from the last. When someone perishes on this island, they have a coin's toss chance of waking up on the sodden boat. Once you've come back, you'll always come back. The brawl was fully involved, and it fell to my team to carry out the rest of the plan. The most fleet of foot and the toughest of the Baron's scavengers kept well back from the skirmish. Those are the ones most likely to be carrying what we're after. They had their backs to us. With a roar, the 5 of us leapt out of hiding and charged a dozen stunned scavengers. Our kilts, plated with femurs, rattled at our sides. Woven through our clothes were lattices of human bones. Cross-hatched rib bones covered our vital organs. Vambraces, splinted with shin bone, shored up our arms. Our masks fashioned from the front of skulls to comfortably fit over our faces. At a glance, we may have looked like a coordinated group of returned. Fortunately, those monsters rarely worked together. That we wore armor identified us as Nev did. It's been ages since passengers bothered to wear armor. They wake up on a boat without clothes, and though bones and time are abundant, the hemp required is better spent on basic clothing. The life of a Nevdid, however, is far more precious than some flimsy bone armor. A Nevdid is someone who is alive since duskfall. A Nevdid is what I've remained. A few of the scavengers bolted away, but most had no time to react. I took the first by driving my knife up through his throat with a 2-handed jab. I jumped back, but a woman with a circular blade slashed across to my stomach, notching the external skeleton I wore. She had fully committed to what I would normally be a decisive swipe. I brought my knife down into her back repeatedly, then she collapsed into me. We tumbled until I untangled myself from her weakened limbs. As I was still trying to regain my balance, a tall man with a bushy beard closed the gap, narrowly missing caving in my head with his club. I rolled into his strike. I flipped my knife around in my grip, leapt up, and dove it behind his left ear. He crumpled to his knees, and I was already checking him for pockets before he fully collapsed. I'm not special. I'm no great warrior. I just have that spark. In a fight between a Nevdid and a passenger, only one really stands to lose anything. In the heat of combat, half-steps and half-hearted strikes decided the victor. There are pockets of Nevdid holed up all over the island. Out of necessity, those are aided by passengers sympathetic to them. Often, it's relationships from before duskfall that compel passengers to care for Nevdid. Spouses, parents, and children. Protection is invaluable, and in my case, the passengers in my family have kept me fed. Many passengers, nearly all of the ones in my family, don't eat. After all, the major consequence of not eating is starvation, which is ultimately trivial to them. Even if a passenger couldn't handle the hunger pangs, there's no shortage of things willing to kill them if they wander into the incorrect territory. By removing themselves as a mouth to feed, but still working fields and defending settlements, they are the sole reason people have enough food to stay alive. The work also keeps them focused. It's almost like they're genuinely alive too. In a way, it's all too easy for passengers to become despondent and join the march to Tilly's drop. The large man and the woman both had what we were looking for. A nail. I know, by old standards, it sounds ridiculous. This much suffering for a handful of rusty nails? Well, because of the tyrannical leadership and the poor planning, iron is one of the dearest materials on the island. We ran through all of the available trees within the first 100 years. After he returned, the Baron started offering food for any metal brought through the gate of his keep. Tools started disappearing. Without hammers and chisels, we had no way of keeping up buildings or mining ore. A bunch of nails may seem like an unsubstantial amount of metal, but it adds up. Around a score of nails keep the boat from completely falling apart. After all these years, the Baron must have stockpiled thousands of stone and iron just from the nails. I had time to recover 2 nails before we had to retreat. Our faltering ambush couldn't preoccupy the bulk of the scavengers, and they were doubling back. Our Nevdid scattered, losing our pursuers amongst the boulders, leaving our dead behind. After that major haul 3 boats ago, we purchased a sizable amount of fish from the pikemen. We met with them in secret on our way to make a delivery. Crates wash up on the northern side of the island relatively frequently. The pikemen recover them, and they can when fishing. They are obligated to deliver any such finds to the Baron for his experiments. The only thing to come back out of the keep from those deliveries are a precious few books. The Baron believes that everyone has the rights to those stories. It's how we know there's still a world out there. It's also how we learn to read and write. Not like there's much else to do. This is the first time we've had a surplus of nails. With our food secured by the new future, we've decided it's time to make use of our savings. No one is comfortable with how dependent we are on others. We will melt these nails down into a pickhead and take control of our lives. If we can drive out the terrors that reside there, maybe we can slowly work the derelict mine. We dried out the rotten planks until we had enough to burn into charcoal. Since he has his own private forest to exploit, the Baron has no need of the wood from the boat. With a furnace made of clay and bellows created with leather, we set to the momentous task. Everyone gathered to watch the fruit of all of our hard work. Flames shot out of the flue, dispersing slightly as we fed the fire more charcoal. The pile of nails were left in a clay cradle, would glow orange and merge into a clump. We knew we would lose much of it, but what remained would be enough. As the heat grew, a face started coming into focus in the flames. For about a quarter of a boat, we worked the furnace. The face in the dancing inferno watched us with a sinister grin. We knew it would be the Baron silently observing our struggle with contempt. Under his gaze, we cracked open the door of the clay forge. A line of passengers readied themselves for the most difficult part. We had dragged a large, flat rock next to the furnace to serve as a makeshift anvil. Without tools, we only had one way of retrieving the metal. In succession, these brave passengers reached into the furnace and coaxed the lump of molten metal as far as they could, until the searing heat rendered their charred fingers inoperable. The smell of burnt flesh broke through the rot we've grown accustomed to. 6 passengers ruined their hands to get the iron on the anvil. They would be whole again on the next boat. Wounds do not persist after coming back, and there is almost no illness on the island. I did my part. I plunged my knife into the base of their skulls as swiftly as I could. It was the least that I could do to erase their suffering and honor their sacrifice. Sacrifice. The family I have now is not the one I was born with. They're not even my second family. I consider them family because they've shared morals and generosity in keeping the Nevdid fed. Without our passengers' constant sacrifice, there wouldn't be enough to go around. The passengers are many things: soldiers, farmers, weapons, lovers, building material, food. For many Nevdid, the solution to keeping a full belly is simple. There's no want for fresh meat, with the heaping piles of bodies created each boat. That's why it's a point of pride that I haven't had to resort to partaking in any of the flesh. It is a debt I can never repay. We were pounding the cooling ore into a shape with rocks when our watchers gave the alarm. The Baron's guards from the gate clanked up our rocky defenses, clad in their iron armor. The location of our camp was common knowledge. The Baron just never bothered to clear us out because of how thin it would spread his forces. Our activities must have justified running his armed guards into the inevitable heavy losses. It appeared he committed everyone to the assault, save the guards of the keep. Even the scavengers we regularly spar with were among the invaders scrambling up to kill us. The passengers grimly went to defend the camp, and the Nevdid scattered to save what we could. I stuffed smoked fish into the bags and recovered this journal. We fled to the mountains. Our passengers didn't stand a chance and were slaughtered to the man. All the Nevdid managed to escape. The Baron somehow watched us through the fire and sent his forces to stop us. They burned our crops, razed our homes, and seized the iron. That iron we had worked so hard to acquire, literally infused with the flesh of my family, now collected dust at the Baron's keep. We're taking shelter in a cave, waiting for the next boat to bring us our fellows. It's been trying for everyone the past few boats. We've settled further inland, better soil but less protection. What good did the mountains do last time? If winter arrives late, we may still get a harvest. We've been discussing whether it's worth it to collect more nails and try again. It was proposed that there may be a way to avoid disaster we saw last time. There is a third outcome to dying here. Like a passenger, you come back, but as something else. It's a rare phenomenon. I can't guess the exact numbers, but unlike passengers, they don't wake up on a boat. We don't know where they come from. All sorts of nightmares roam the land, sea and sky. Some closely resemble who they were when they were humans. Some have no resemblance of humanity left. We call them the Returned. A returned named Agnes resides in the hills south of the dock. To all appearances, she seems like a hermit. I don't rightly know what she is, but I know what we'd call her before duskfall. Agnes is a witch. The plan was to ask her if there was some way we can blind the Baron's eyes to our fires. The passengers sent to meet with Agnes did not return to the camp the way they left. They came back on the boat. They reported that after they discussed the deal, they found themselves unable to move. She boiled them alive, telling them she appreciated the visit. She claimed that she could make us a ward that would stop the Baron from spying on us. The price is considerable. Agnes wants 3 Nevdid. The only thing that brings any variety to this monotonous, gloomy place are the Nevdid. Without us, every boat could be spent perpetually motionless. For that reason, Nevdid seem to be one of the few things Returned show interest in. Most of them probably just think we taste better, but I doubt the creature like Agnes would have had such blunt use for us. We can't continue on like this. My people need more meaning in their lives, and if we can't work towards building a better life, I don't know if we can fight on. I'm going to offer myself as one of the witch's tributes. After everything my family has done for me, this one doesn't even begin to repay the countless nights they went hungry or perished at gnashing jaws, all to keep people like me safe. We don't even know for certain she wants to kill us. Although, it could be that she's concocting something far worse. I should be glad I can give my family a chance. It's been centuries since I've truly been afraid. The constant threat of dying at some creature's whim wears one's emotions down. Keeping myself alive meant more than just simply continuing to exist. It meant having a chance to escape this horrible place. The sweet oblivion of death is a luxury that many of my loved ones may never know. To actually toss that coin and know for certain I'm going to spend eternity here as well. The thought terrifies me.
Thank you for listening. You can probably handle another horror story, right?